So Brandon from Mindshift has released another video, and I really like watching his videos because it forces me to think about things that I might not have thought about. And his very first bit, I was like, huh, yeah, I haven't done anything about that. I wonder what's going on. That sounds really, really interesting. So please go watch his video in the description below. By all means, go check that out. His video is probably better than mine, and that is perfectly okay. I want you to get his stuff, and I'm going to go through his arguments as best I can for at least this first one, and then we'll touch on some other stuff at the end. But I don't want to misrepresent him at all, and I think that his stuff is very important to wrestle with, and so I want you to do that. And then you can come back if you care about what I have to say about this, which you're watching my video, so I hope you do. Okay, so first he's talking about Ezekiel 26, 3 through 14, where it says that Yahweh says, behold, I'm against you, Tyre, and I'm going to bring many nations who are going to be like waves crashing against you. They will destroy the walls. They will plunder. You'll be plunder for the nations. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, is going to show up and do all of this kind of stuff. He's building siege works. He's going to do all of that. And then eventually it's going to be that, you're going to be a bare rock. You're a place for spreading nets, and you will be built no more. Okay. And what Brandon goes on to talk about then, right, is he says, okay, well, first of all, he says, this didn't happen. He says, but Nebuchadnezzar did come and attack for like 13 years. Which means it did happen, Brandon. It happened exactly. Nebuchadnezzar comes and shows up, okay? But he says, but he ends up failing. But like, he didn't exactly fail, right? He actually did subjugate Tyre. Now, he didn't destroy it, right? And in fact, Brandon even mentions that Ezekiel 29:18 covers this, right? So like, okay, the Bible's right about this. Oh, but this passage is the wrong one. Okay, so let's focus on that for a moment. Okay, he says, he says at one point in time, I'm sorry, did we not just read the same prophecy? Because it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar that destroyed it. Right, because you didn't read the same thing, because it's about many nations, like waves, that they're going to destroy it. And it's plunder for the nations. Is Nebuchadnezzar nations? No. And this is where once I got to the text, right? Once I got to the text and got out of Brandon's talking, I was like, what's he even talking about here? Right? Like the complaint is not even what the text is claiming or talking about. And I found that fascinating. That he says, well, you just have to read the passage to see how wrong this is. Except that, like, it's not. Like, at all. Like none of it. Okay? Now, the one point that I think that he makes some really good point, right, is this point of like, you will be built no more, right? You're gonna be a bare rock, right? And he says, I just don't see how Christians are going to get around this. This is a clear failed prophecy. God was wrong. Okay. He says that it was rebuilt, and not only that, it's been continually inhabited the entire time, so not a bare rock. Except that, like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't able to verify this. So history buffs or somebody come in and verify this for me. Is the fortress rock still inhabited? Or is that a bare rock where like you could spread nets and stuff? I don't know. I wasn't able to look that up, but that's my guess as to what happened. So this impenetrable fortress, right? Out in the middle of the ocean, a ways off land so you can't get to it, I think was destroyed and was not rebuilt. So yeah, it is true that there is a place called Tyre that is still in that area, right? Like people still live in the land. Like that makes perfect sense. But like the military stronghold is gone. And then he keeps talking about, Brandon keeps being like, okay, but like Nebuchadnezzar, it's not Nebuchadnezzar, right? This is a failed prophecy because it's not Nebuchadnezzar who destroys it, right? Well, we already talked about how, yeah, it's the many nations, right? He's like, oh, I forgot the part where it says that Alexander the Great was the one who destroyed it. Well, it does say that, right? It says it up there about the many nations, like waves coming again and again and again, destroying, right? That's right there with this. And the reason why Nebuchadnezzar is the one who's mentioned here is because this is Ezekiel, which is dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem. And he's like, hey, and by the way, Nebuchadnezzar's not done. In fact, God's going to use him to also go and destroy Tyre, right? So like, this isn't just like, oh, well, we're just predicting the future because we feel like, pulling out a fun party trick or whatever out of our hat and proving that God has foreknowledge and all that stuff. No, the point of this is God is still in control and using things. And I think that is important to recognize that the purpose of prophecy is not really to be like, oh, well, I'm going to be able to predict the future and better than you. No, it's far more about what is God up to and why is he doing the things that he's doing. And that's why Nebuchadnezzar matters here in Ezekiel. Okay, so then just really quickly busting through the other ones that he has here. Okay, he has Genesis 7:8, right, where it says, I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land where you are traveling, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be your God. And he says, well, but like this didn't happen, right? Because the Bible itself says that, they got kicked out of the land. They were taken into exile numerous times. Like they do not have continuous possession. And then throughout history, we see this, right? Because the Bible said so. So like, yeah, what are you talking about? Oh, it's this passage that you're having a problem with. Okay, well, then let's just scroll down a little bit. The uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So if the covenant is with the people and then the people break the covenant and then they're not part of the people anymore, well, then they've lost it, right? And this is actually one of those really tragic things for the Israelites when they lose the land. They're like, wow, what happened here, right? And then God brings them back. And they go, okay, we need to rethink how we're doing things, right? And so that is a part of the Jewish entire experience, and it's part of their whole heritage, and all like this is that. And it's important because God does promise, I'm going to do this. But when you break my covenant, you're not in. So then they break the covenant, and then they're not in. And God repeatedly warns them over and over throughout the entire Old Testament. That's literally one of the major themes of the Old Testament. That it's there. Okay, so that's not okay. All right. So then we're in Exodus 7, where it says, "The Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh." And Brandon is talking about how, but they never converted to Yahweh worship. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. In fact, if you've been following along with my Exodus series, which you haven't because no one's watching those videos, and that's okay, we see that it's not about you becoming part of the Abrahamic line by following Yahweh or anything like that. The point is that you recognize that Yahweh is actually the one who's in control, not you, or your gods, or your Pharaoh, or his son, or his supposed dad, all that stuff, right? Not there. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, so then we move on to Exodus 33, where we have, you cannot see my face, for a man may not see me and live. Okay, very clear. If you see God's face, you die. But if you just scroll back, Yahweh spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to a friend. What's going on there? Contradiction. The Bible is a mess, right? Except that, this is in here. And then it's funny because Brandon does say that this is a combination of multiple records of a similar story. That is one theory that's out there. I think it's a terrible theory because why in the world would you do such a bad job editing when we know for a fact that the scriptures are just this brilliant set of works that have just been interwoven and there's so much good stuff. Just listen to the Bible Project's podcast if you want to get into the nerdy, just insane stuff that's in there, just as an example. Okay, crazy stuff that's going into there. So clearly there's something else that's going on. And this is a problem with our Western minds being like, oh, it can't be this way. And not understanding the Jewish mind, the Eastern mind, which is like, okay, but how do these two things connect? And what we have, if you look at Dr. Michael Heiser's work and all that stuff, you've got the two powers, right? Which is like, okay, yeah, you can't see Yahweh God. But Yahweh God does have this angel figure, this other figure, this human type figure who shows up and talks. And that is, but isn't God. And all of that is laying the framework for what will eventually be considered Trinitarian thought. So much good stuff on that. And again, the Bible Project has a great series on that. And it's a long series. I think they said they recorded for 28 hours. Okay, so good stuff. You can listen to that if you want to nerd out over all of the fun little details. But this is also not a thing. Okay, now for the last one. Okay. Which is in Matthew 24, where Jesus says that this generation will not pass away until all these things are accomplished. And, but according to Brandon, there's been 81 generations since then. Yeah, it seems really bad, right? This generation. Okay. And there's a footnote there and there's arguments. Okay. The scholars disagree on what in the world is going on with this particular thing. Brandon is like, well, see, this generation clearly has to be the one that Jesus is talking to right then and there, and because they have all died, unless you're one of those crazy people who thinks that they're still alive somehow. Woo, okay. Or, and he recognizes that some people say, yeah, it could be, this race of people, this group of people, which then there's people who are like, what, that kind of translation is terrible. Like, what are you even doing? Okay. So there's all that. Now, one potential thing that's out there would be that he's talking about the ones who see these signs, right? Okay. So there's all this stuff that's happening. And then when these people see these signs, hey, you got to know that this is now, right? It's actually coming. It's actually happening. Okay. That's one potential thing that we could do. Okay. But Brandon says, okay, but just because there is an answer doesn't mean that it is good or valid or logical. Okay. And he says, we should compare this to how we respond when, say, a Muslim has a response like this to something that's clearly wrong in the Quran. Like clearly, right? So why are we okay with, finding out these ways to round this kind of stuff? I think that is an excellent point. Okay. I think that is wonderful to say, hey, look, why do you allow people, why do you not let people weasel out when you weasel out in these kinds of things? I think that it is important to recognize multiple things about this. One of them being that the book of the Bible itself, put together and all that, was not written for our modern sensibilities. And the more we can understand that, the better. This is not trying to think the way that we think, answer the questions that we think about. This is an ancient text that does important things, and we need to understand that. I also think that it is important because of that to be like, okay, but why do we look at the Quran so differently from that? Well, I would say one reason is because it's not nearly as ancient. Okay, it's not nearly as ancient, and so that'd be one piece with this. Okay, well, there's stuff to think about with this for sure, and there is a recognition that scholarship is not settled on a lot of this stuff. Like this generation thing, like that one, I'll give it to Brandon. That one is kind of open for me. I don't know exactly how I want to handle that. And but it doesn't change anything for me because it still fits within the context of how this all fits together for me. And I know that Brandon's like, oh, context, blah blah. No, context actually matters. It's actually important for understanding what the text is, as we saw with Ezekiel's example at the very beginning. So I hope this was helpful in just talking through some of the things. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. It was just like, hey, I thought that first one was really interesting, and then I looked at it and was like, wait, this is getting less and less interesting the longer I go because it's not a good critique at all. So there you go. That's what I have for you. Hope that helps. Please leave your comments if you have anything you want to do or say, wow, what are you talking about? Whatever. I'm interested in hearing and learning more because this is the Blogogy. Let's learn more together.